Today, a judge ruled in favour of the State Agency Affairs Board. It applied to prevent Mechanic and her CC from operating, given that Wendy Mechanic Properties does not have a valid Fidelity Fund certificate for this year. The certificate was withheld following claims of financial mismanagement. It's alleged that Mechanic dipped into the deposits of home buyers held in the company's trust accounts to keep her business afloat. In December, the EAAB successfully applied to place the agency's trust accounts under curatorship following the alleged irregularities involving around 25 million rand. The state agency has denied the claims of mismanagement. Although some small businesses increased their turnover last year, many saw their profit margins declining. Almost half of the 2,000 respondents to a survey by Softline Pastel say they managed to increase turnover, but even among those participants, there were some that blamed market uncertainty for the slump in profitability. Well, to discuss further, Pastel's Managing Director, that's Stephen Cohen. Great to have you with us, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
On the face of things, it looks quite good. Almost half said that their turnover increased, but you say that looking closer, there were some problems.
Exactly. I think the typical scenario is that while people's turnover may increase or stay the same, your infrastructure costs are increasing, and that mainly comes through electricity, water, obviously salaries and wages. In terms of what you said early on, I think people are they're confident about what's going on. The exchange rate's playing around with imports and exports, but that's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But people aren't worrying out there. But the input costs are an issue, and if you're in a competitive environment, it's not always easy to just increase your selling prices to adjust for your input costs going up.
Is that still a big concern this year? We're still expecting energy costs to go up, electricity prices still coming through.
Well, absolutely. You know, with Eskom, I think it's 30 year for the next couple of years, so that's going to affect people. And also, we've also seen businesses having to take care of their own security because they feel that the government's not doing that properly. So all of a sudden, you're kind of paying these hidden taxes in a way where before that would be taken care of. Now you're going to have to employ a lot of your own private, outsource a lot of your stuff, where before you wouldn't have to do that.
There are some good signs, though. Economic growth trending upwards, retail figures looking good. Is there hope for small businesses?
Well, you were talking about stock exchanges, and you've been doing this job for a while. You know that if you put your money in stock exchanges over the last year, you're probably up 20-25%. And I think that a lot of people think, well, then everything's going well, everything's looking good. But SMEs still are struggling out there. They're not doing as well as, let's say, the stock exchange indicators would represent. So, I need to look at that a bit more. But people are feeling okay. Also speaking of the banking crisis 2 years ago, everybody was extremely concerned about how that was going to knock on. And I think people are relatively calm because it wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be.
You say that SMEs have had no meaningful voice. Do you think this survey will help to raise their concerns?
Well, we've launched this Pastel SME Business Survey. This was our first survey. We want to do it a couple of times and then leverage the user base that we have of 200,000 businesses use our software. This is a completely objective survey, though. So now with that information, we hope to go to government and, let's say, the relevant bodies and be a voice for the SME market out there.
Is it problematic that this is new, that you can't gauge how SMEs are doing last year as compared to 2009, for example?
It's not really a problem. I mean, everybody knows around the world, everybody struggled in 2008, 2009. We've also been in the market for 20 years, and we deal with our consumers all the time, our customers. So it would be nicer when we build up the track record, so at least you can make comparable comparisons. But I think you've got to start somewhere, and we're pretty confident that this is going to be a good initiative.
Of the 2,000 respondents, 63% reported a turnover of less than 5 million.
Yes.
Does this mean a lot of small businesses are performing under par? It doesn't sound that impressive.
Well, it depends what kind of business you're in. If your margins are, let's say, 60%, then on 5 million you can be making a 3 million margin, less your expenses, you could still be making decent money. What I love about SMEs, though, is that they employ 60% of the employable workforce in this country. And that is what's so vital for me, that there's so many knock-ons from what an SME does. You can look at the profitability of the SME, but what about the families that are employed through the SME, send their kids to school? And I think that that's so important. One interesting thing that is relevant though is that in the first world countries, 90% of GDP comes from SMEs. In this country, it's still only 50. So, I think there's a way to go, and we know that the employment issue in this country is probably the single biggest issue, and SMEs could get us out of it.
It is a big issue for government. Does the sector have the potential to create many of these jobs that are so desperately needed?
Well, if you think about it, they reckon that there's 1.5 million SMEs in this country. Imagine if each one, and this is theoretical, employed one person. You've got another 1.5 million. What also is interesting in the statistics is that 60% of the owners of these businesses were over the age of 40. And I kind of thought that's a bit much. So I hope that the youngsters aren't just into going into corporates, that they want to be entrepreneurial, start their own businesses. Because often people go for safety first. Let me go and join a bank or something. So 60% kind of stood out for me, of being over the age of 40.
For youngsters there. Finally, 5% sold more than 50 million.
Yes.
So that is sizable revenue profits there. What is the secret? Is it the business idea?
The business idea is the secret. Everybody talks about red tape, frustrating people. It's the business idea, and manage your people creatively and properly. I think that if you've got a decent idea and you know how to manage people, and you just take care of the finances, which is just standard stuff, you'll do all right.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your time.
Thank
That was Stephen Cohen from Softline Pastel. And with that, let's take a look at your weather. Here's Derek.
Welcome to the Weather Center. It's time for your latest weekend forecast. Here's our 24-hour satellite loop, and you can still clearly see the counterclockwise circulation in the cloud cover, still driving in the tropical moisture to our country, allowing for the cloud and the widespread rainfall to develop across the central parts. In fact, this is where we have our greatest likelihood of rainfall overnight, including the interior of the Eastern Cape. Light rain along the East Coast with a few isolated thunderstorms throughout the Northeast. So let's take you into the future with our cloud forecast so you can plan your activities around your wet weekend outlook. This low pressure system will create an onshore flow along the South Coast, creating cloud and the possibility of rain near George. Maybe a sneaky shower overnight into Cape Town, but chances are very, very slim. It will certainly be a windy day into the Mother City on Saturday with heavy rain across the central parts extending to the east coast of South Africa. In fact, the South African Weather Service has issued a heavy rain watch for your Saturday, where you see this shading of amber, and that means that we could see rainfall accumulate to more than 50 millimeters in a 24-hour period in an already saturated environment that could lead to some minor flooding. Heat and humidity leading to an uncomfortable day over KwaZulu-Natal, and we have an advisory for the second half of your weekend. Heavy rain will overspread KZN as well as Mpumalanga.